Most schools, like Christchurch Primary in South London, have very little money to spend on CPD. But there's a lot that can be done within a school. John Carey is a senior advisor with Durham LEA and a specialist in professional development. We've asked him to look at how well this school is doing and offer a few tips.
We're still in that stage when people think CPD is about going out of school and going off on courses. And of course it is, that is part of it. But actually there's much more that you can do within school that has much more benefit for the school itself and for the individuals involved. And also, of course, is very efficient in terms of time and in terms of finance.
First, John wants to get an idea of the school's strengths. Deputy Head Colette Morris has just been put in charge of CPD. Christchurch is a one-form entry primary. You might think there are limited opportunities here for teachers to learn from each other, but that's not the case.
We have Key Stage 1 on
this side,
and Key Stage 2 on this side.
OK.
We're very small, so we've got one class for each, which in some ways is good.
Yeah.
In other ways it's not. Preparing teachers up for working with each other. It's great if you've got more than one year group.
Yeah.
Actually, if you've only got one year group, it's harder to have people working together. We actually spent one inset day, where we walked round all the school.
Excellent.
Unless teachers actually walk round the whole school, they don't get the feeling that you do when you walk round.
Absolutely.
Of what goes on in the classrooms. And teachers are really good at taking ideas from each other.
Yeah.
So we encourage people to go into each other's classrooms and actually look what's there. So you do get that feeling of continuity and progression as you go through. And that people gave each other ideas about displays and also our learning support. They do a lot of work with and for teachers on
and are the learning support staff, they're involved in all of these things that you're talking about, the walking through the classrooms and talking about what's...
Can the helpers put their hands up, please?
Now John wants to find out how the staff feel about the school's approach to CPD. Paul Moses teaches Year 5.
The overall culture it's a very positive, encouraging one. Encouraging you to decide for yourself what you need. But also offering you a range of options that you could choose from if perhaps you couldn't decide what direction you should choose. And I think there's also always a sense of there's things going on. So you don't have fallow periods. One of the difficulties is the time scale. It's never... it doesn't turn around as quickly as you'd like. Because there's other things that we need to do. So say, for instance, with First Steps, that has to work around other topics and other subjects. So you don't necessarily get back to it and to feedback or to reflect.
Well done. Pass it down the table. That's fine.
Emma Hargreaves has just arrived at the school. It's her second year as a teacher.
So what shapes do you think, if we got to sell them in our shop, what kind of shapes do you think we could put to make them into? Good. Phyllis?
With my last school, I didn't feel like I was getting the training that I needed or that I wanted, and it was quite frustrating because it's sort of, the classroom is quite, it is working within the school, but it's quite solitary sort of within the classroom. That if you don't have that training from other teachers or looking at other schools, it's quite hard to progress yourself. So coming here, they did give me more opportunities to see other classrooms and to develop myself.
Peer observation is one of the key ways CPD is implemented at Christchurch. The staff believe all schools could benefit from doing more of it.
There's a lot of teachers in the country who are incredibly isolated, who don't know what's going on in other classrooms in their own schools, especially in large schools. I think it's very easy to end up in a bubble and not be aware of what anyone else is doing, even when they're doing something that's just right for a hole in your practice. You don't even know it's going on.
Well, what advice would you give to a school?
I think it's important not to be too precious about your world, your little world, which is your classroom, and I think you ought to be expecting people to come in and watch you, and especially if you're doing things that you're proud of and you're pleased with, you should want people to see them and to share your practice, and equally you should expect to be able to go and share other people's good practice, of course, and as long as teachers don't feel as though they're being scrutinised in a negative way.
I've gone in to watch other people, I just come in to say, things that you do really well. I know you do this really well, so you sort of in a way, you sort of boost the person up that you're going to watch and observe, and you sort of say, you know, I want to see something. You know, I know that you do this really well. I want to see how you do it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Like how the people down here.
Brendan Richards teaches Year 4. He's been on a reading inset, and Paul wants to watch him put this into practice. But peer observation needs to be done with a very clear focus.
From my point of view, I've seen the literature, and what you start off with was what we used to call the reading continuum. It's now called the developmental map, which maps out where children should be in various stages of their reading. Now, I know where my children are, and I'm very interested in finding out what strategies and what techniques would move them on to the next one. Right. And as it's so distinct and it's so clear, it's more a question of specific steps to get from A to B, rather than very general things like you need them to be more confident readers. It's far more specific than that, so I'm very keen on watching what Brendan's going to bring to bear, because I'll be using it next. You know.
Today, what we're going to do is we're going to continue working on our character portraits and looking at characters in our reading, okay? And
the observation starts with Brendan trying out a technique to encourage children to think more deeply about the meaning of a story. It's something he learnt on the inset.
And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be jotting down some notes. So then when you come to do your reading activities, you'll be able to do your character self-portraits really well. The text is the title. General McTiger was the most magnificent animal in the forest. He had splendid whiskers, flashing eyes, and a stately walk. Most especially, he had a thick, silky coat with dazzling black stripes. So straight away, my character is General McTiger. And straight away, I can sit there and think, I am a tiger. I know straight away I can put that on my character portrait. And I live in a forest.
I think a key thing that I'm taking away so far is that there's a strong sense of collaborative effort and collaborative working, which is key. It comes across in all sorts of ways, by the way they talk with each other, just generally, by the way they talk about the kind of activities they've been engaged in. For instance, the kind of thing we're looking at today, where people are quite happy to share their practice.
But has this peer observation delivered the tools which Paul needs to move his children onto the next stage of reading?
Well, one thing I picked up was the task being related to different texts.
Right.
Which is something I don't do. I tend to link it all to one text.
Yeah.
So having children working at their own level, and their own ability level, reading a book that's appropriate for their group and fitting the task to that text.
On an observation, there's always a two-way thing. You've gone in to learn something. I suspect he'll want to hear your thoughts about what he did. That's common practice, I guess, So what sorts of things would you want to point him in the direction of, do you think?
Well, I'm more interested in what he can point me in, rather than feeding back what my kind of sort of criticisms might be. So I might ask him his thinking behind things he did, and see if it was similar to what I was imagining he was thinking.
All right, continue reading and see if you can find some more things out about the wolf.
But John's disappointed that the peer observation is not seen more as a two-way process, and also that it hasn't delivered the specific skills Paul was looking for.
I think as the process, it's a start. I would like to see people spending more time in the preparation side of it. I mean, it doesn't take a long time to be clear with each other about what we're expecting to get out of it. Although they talked about being very specific, I wondered when we talked afterwards about how specific it actually had been.
It seems here that peer observation is a one-way process. Is that the way it should be?
Yeah, no. And I'm not sure that it is the way here either, but what we were getting from Paul is the need for balance, that the person doing the observation was there for a purpose, and that they need to get out of it what they want to get out of it, because Brendan was the one who was, if you like, the internal expert in this particular way of working. They can understand why that was there.
But Paul seemed to be thinking if he was doing it, he'd do it differently.
Yes,
Wouldn't that be worth passing on to Brendan?
I agree with you. That is part of what a professional conversation is. That if you're both taking it on as a learning opportunity, then the professional conversation that occurs afterwards has to be both ways, that both people learn from that, not just the one.
And don't forget the consumers. John believes the children's views can be a rich source for CPD.
OK, so we're all set to go now. So now we're going to talk about what you think makes a really good teacher. So let's just have, say, one thing from each person to start with. Yeah?
Teacher with discipline.
Discipline. They're going to teach you some discipline. Right.
Teacher that comforts you when you're down.
Yeah.
A teacher where you actually learn from them.
Very important.
A teacher with patience.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher that's fun.
Yeah. It's good to have fun when you're learning, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
A teacher that cares.
Yeah.
A teacher that's quite funny, because then you learn as a joke.
Ah, that's interesting. OK. Yeah.
A teacher that doesn't get angry and make you nervous.
Do teachers getting angry make people nervous, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah?
A teacher that makes you feel bad for something that you haven't done or not your fault.
Yeah.
A teacher that's kind.
How would you... I'll come back to you in a minute. Yeah? How do we know a teacher's kind? What do they do?
By the look on their faces.
Mm-hmm. OK.
By the way they talk to you.
Yeah? What sorts of things would a kind teacher say?
When you get something wrong, then they'll help you out with it. Or say if you're frightened to do something because you got it wrong quite a few times, they'd help you to do it so you wouldn't make the mistake again.
Yeah. I was interested in the fact that their first port of call has nothing to do with the things like literacy, numeracy, geography, history, subjects. It's all about the person. And I think that's a very big message that we've got to take back.
John believes generally the school is moving in the right direction.
I think there are some steps you can make, particularly on the collaborative side, that it would be well worth considering. And that is to really sharpen up that the preparatory bit, so that people know what they're coming into and come in with that mindset. But also that there's follow-up. I would be looking, if I were in your shoes, at how I could help create some space for people to have those conversations. And I'm only talking about 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't need to be a whole lesson or anything like that.
Do you know, when I was just talking to Brendan earlier, I thought if I'd given Brendan more chance to talk through with Paul what Paul was actually focusing on that time, that would have enabled them both to be clearer about the observation. So it's really good. I'm really going to try and do that and put that in place. Because I haven't done that enough.
Overall, John is positive about the school's learning culture, both for children and adults. But it's crucial that good ideas like peer observation are properly executed so that staff can get the most out of them.